Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Just a very natural thing. And that's what I think the university should also put some patient to explain just have this pattern. And here
Let it go to the top. That's the noise end.
Stops. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you all here today. My name is Anahita Majumdar, and I'm the Associate Editor of Himal Southasian. And we're very honored to be able to organize this lecture in conjunction with the India International Center today, and have with us Professor Arif Hasan, a renowned urban philosopher based in Karachi, whom all of you know about. He's going to talk to us today about issues related to the growth of megacities in South Asia, which are either flowering or metastasizing, depending on your point of view. It's good to see an audience here today on a day in which I know Delhi is packed with so many competing events, and I'm sure more people are coming in through the traffic as we speak. It's partly our fault. We managed to publicize this event only rather late in the day because we were on tenterhooks that Professor Hasan might not get his visa. We all know how troubling it is between India and Pakistan, and visas are held up till the last minute, almost like holding people hostage. So we were able to spread the word only in the last 2-3 days. In fact, given the arbitrary nature of how visas are denied almost on a whim by government, all our governments in South Asia, we in Himal have started a section which we are calling the blacklist, keeping track and collating the names of all those scholars, activists, researchers, and journalists who are being denied visas by our governments in South Asia. So if any of you have any names, do send them to us as well. We were very happy, though, that we didn't have to add the name of Professor Hasan at the top of the list, and that he managed to come here and be with us here today. The need for greater connectivity and collaboration are, of course, core to Himal and the work that we are doing here through our journalism, which is practical, not preachy, realistic, and not rhetorical. However, this is quite a challenge for us, since we are not a commercial organization, and if I may plug us, since we are not allowed to sell Himal here, but ask you all to go back, look at our issues, and perhaps subscribe so that we can move towards survival. I'm not going to speak anymore because I know Professor Hasan is a fantastic speaker. I have heard him in Kathmandu, but I would like to invite my editor, Kanakmani Dikshit, to introduce Professor Hasan and the subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Anohita. At Himal magazine, based in Kathmandu, we had the privilege of having Arif Saab come over to speak about the end of feudalism in Pakistan. And while the topic was the end of feudalism, it was not feudalism that we normally tend to talk about looking from the outside, which is the 25, 28 odd families. No, it was really going down to the grassroots, the changes in the economy, the introduction of technology, the market ingress in rural Sindh, rural Pakistan, that was ending a whole lifestyle, good and bad, from historical times, changing about now. So what Anohita, my colleague, and myself, we felt it was very important to bring Arif Hasan to Delhi. Not that he's not at all a stranger to Delhi, but we, Himal, wanted to bring him to Delhi because we also tried to promote a sense of South Asianism, to bring South Asian sensibility to cross-pollinate, and we thought there was no better way to do it than to bring Arif Hasan from Karachi to Delhi. And we also believe that these things should happen much easier. It should not be an addition, E-D-I-T-I-O-N. It should be something that happens normally. Someone from Dhaka speaking in Bhubaneswar, Karachi person in Chandigarh. But what we realize is these things have to, thus far, they have to happen with an effort. And this effort certainly is worth it, because what we have in Arif Saab is a polymath in the true sense of the word. He's an architect, an urban planner. In Himal, I don't know if anybody else has coined it, but we prefer to call him an urban philosopher, for everything that it may mean. And he's also what I would define as a South Asian, as a very positive sounding appellation, because a South Asian, in my reading, is somebody, beyond being an Indian or a Bangladeshi or a Pakistani, in addition, you also have that sensibility, a sense of history, that then gives you a sense of empathy. And that's why we are very proud to bring him here. Professor Hasan, he's also a teacher. And as he was telling us just now, he likes to teach in Urdu to his class of architects in Karachi. But beyond that, he's much more. He's associated with the Orangi Project, which would be, if I may put a counterpart, the Dharavi counterpart in Pakistan. Working under the circumstances in Karachi that some of you may well know about. But the positive spirit that when people would want to see only mayhem in his hometown, Karachi, Arif Saab sees the balance, the battling forces between the progressive side of society and the quote-unquote fundamentalist side of society. So he brings texture to our understanding, and now to this topic that we have with us, which is the mega cities and what some have started calling the smart city concept. And as it overtakes us in South Asia, his experience is South Asia wide, but his base is Karachi. And so we look forward to hearing him, and certainly after that we will have question answers. I think Arif Saab would have about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how he takes it. Then we'll open up for question answer. Very happy that we could do this together with the India International Center. Himal has had a long history as a institution from Kathmandu to be coming to Delhi to do an event, and to find as welcoming a place as the India International Center. And this particular hall, we really wanted this hall, even if we had to wait some time for it, because this carries with it its own ambiance and a sense of, if I might say, South Asian-ness, because there's a history to this place. So before this we had Ramachandra Guha in lecture, and today we have Arif Hasan Sahab. We hope to continue to have this sort of events here in collaboration with the IIC. Arif Sahab.
Well, first of all, Kanak, Himal, and the Indian International Center, thank you so much for having arranged this and having invited me. Delhi is special to me. I was born here and left Delhi on the last train that ever went from Delhi to Karachi. That was the 15th of August, 1947. So it's always nice, in a way, being back in Delhi. Well, the contents of my talk are drawn from my research work, teaching and activism in Pakistan in general, and in Karachi in particular. But I've been associated, I've had the privilege of having been associated with programs and projects in a number of cities in South Asia and in Asia in general. And over the last 2.5 decades, I've worked on a number of projects in these countries and have had the benefit of meeting their planners, government officials, and NGO activists, and on occasions spent some time with the communities that live in these cities. The subject of megacities has been discussed almost to death. It is something that is written about by economists. The economists write about the economic aspects of it. The environmentalists write about the terrible environmental conditions. The planners write about the infrastructure issues that are so damaging to the lives of poor communities. And now you can add climate change to it. So all these discussions take place in the press all the time, and also are subjects of academic research. They are all available on the net. I will approach this issue from a somewhat different perspective. I will talk about the socio-economic change that is taking place and the state's response to that socio-economic change in physical and in investment terms. Since most of my research is on Karachi, I will refer to Karachi often, but I think you will be able to identify similar trends in your own cities. One statistic stands out regarding the megacities of South Asia, and that is the phenomenal increase in their populations, especially after the last census. This holds true of them all except for Calcutta. For instance, the Delhi population, according to the 2011 census, was between 16 and 17 million. Today, it is being claimed that it is more than 24 million. I don't know how accurate it is, but serious writings claim that it is 24 million. Then you have Dhaka. It was projected at 18 million for 2015. I'm told by my Bangladeshi friends, it's shot way beyond this. They talk of 22 million today. I would believe none of this, by the way, because the figures are so large. I wouldn't believe it if I didn't come from Karachi. Because Karachi has grown at a phenomenal rate. It was 11 million in 1998. Today, it is about 21 million, almost double that amount. And not only that, it has expanded by, it's increased by 100%. Spatially, the city has expanded by 23%, swallowing up villages and their pasture lands and ruining the district's rural economy. Now, there are 2 points of view here. A very able Karachi planner, Farhan Anwar, has documented the terrible damage this expansion does to rural communities and how it impoverishes them, whereas my colleague Parveen Rahman supported this expansion because she said it was going to benefit the poor who were coming into the city. Now you have two very pro-poor planners thinking in very different terms. I think this is a subject that needs attention. Also in 2011, it was estimated that the total urban population of South Asia was 243 million, of which 34% lived in megacities. If we take today's figures, it's already 40%. I find it very difficult to believe, but evidence suggests that this is so. But the question I've been engaged with is, why is this phenomenal increase taking place? Roland D'Souza, another Karachi planner, has argued that this expansion is simply because South Asian populations have grown by about 550% between 1941 and 2011. Whereas in other countries, the growth has been much less. For example, Thailand increased in about the same period by 280%, and Britain by 160%. Roland argues that if we had increased only by 300%, we would be living in a very different world. So, as he says, this is our positive achievement is that we have produced so many children. So, he says, as he puts it, growth less, migration less. Growth more, migration more. Percentages do not tell us the truth anymore because the figures are so large. So for one thing, I think we should talk more in terms of figures rather than percentages. Our own research on Pakistan has established that the most important reason for increase in migration are the changes that are taking place in the socio-economic conditions of the rural areas. Through a long process, which I have documented in my writings, rural economy has transformed from a barter to a cash one. And in the process, the link between caste and profession, which made village self-sufficiency possible, has either vanished or is under pressure. As a result, the village no longer, at least in Pakistan, in most of Pakistan, has a lohar, a kumar, a badhai, a chamar, a raj, etc. They have all migrated to the cities. The village today depends entirely on urban produced goods and is no longer self-sufficient, a self-sufficiency that Gandhi admired very much. The landless labor and the traditional lower castes cannot afford the city manufactured goods, and so migration is the only option left. The earlier migrants made a conscious decision to migrate to improve their livelihoods and families back home. They came from stable societies where local community governance systems functioned even if they were questioned. The present migrants come from societies where the jirga has no moral authority. Jirga is a form of intertribal association to sort out disputes. They come from societies where the jirga has no moral authority, and the chaudhry, panchayat, the mukhi, the patel, and the nambardar are all non-existent. Also, the clan and extended family is disintegrating. So there is a freedom to choose, move, and freedom from community controls and loyalties. This is the trend. It's a very powerful trend, and it's not going to be reversed. For the first time, lower castes such as Bhils, Kolis, Megwads, and Jogis, who did not migrate before except as individuals, now have the freedom to migrate en masse, and they do. However, due to their lack of skills, they are, in essence, large circulating populations going back to the rural areas during the harvesting season and having no permanent residence. All this is new. It's in Pakistan. It's in the last 15 to 20 years that these changes have started consolidating themselves. Then something else has happened. Most of the migrants used to work on building sites, building roads, building buildings. Mechanization of construction projects has limited their jobs. We just studied a project, road building project, a small road building project, in which everything was mechanized. Excavation was mechanized. Earth refilling was mechanized. Compaction was mechanized. The laying of the tarmac was mechanized. And we asked the contractor how many people had he employed, and he said 60. And we said, if you didn't have these machines, how many people would you have employed? He said about 1,000. Now, this is a very big factor in limiting of jobs. This is a study that we are currently doing to see how this works and how it affects migrant labor. There are other reasons for migration as well, which I will talk about later, but one very important factor is that the cities that we are talking about are becoming cities of migrants increasingly, and the local population will have less of a presence. In Karachi, it's already so. Also, the cities to which migration is taking place today have also changed. For one, they have expanded spatially, and land and real estate has replaced gold as an investment. As my friend Akbar Zaidi says, he says, whatever happened for जो भी सोने के लिए होता था अब ज़मीन के लिए होता है. So you kill, you occupy, you pressurize. Has replaced gold as an investment. It is no longer possible to squat near the city center and work areas as it was before. The Kachi Abadis of Karachi are history. They are not going to be there anymore because the land is not there. The only areas where the poor can find affordable land, and that too informally developed and only for occupation, is on the extreme city fringe, which is far away from work areas. If I look at land values in Karachi, which we've studied to some extent, in 1991, 1 square meter of land on the city's periphery, right out, was 1.7 times the daily wage at that time. Today, it is 40 times the daily wage, far away, even further away from the city than it was in 1991. So there are other problems. The non-regularized informal settlements, and even regularized ones, are needed for middle-class housing, whose demand has grown by 300% in the last decade. And this demand is likely to grow as the middle class increases. Living on the fringe is more expensive than renting within the city due to rising transport costs. On the fringe means expensive commuting and time, and there are also social costs. Our studies show that women cannot work on the fringe. Fathers often do not see their children because of long hours of traveling. Entertainment and recreation cannot be accessed. People are fatigued due to commuting in uncomfortable and expensive transport in terrible environmental conditions. The worst affected are women. There's a transport study which will be out soon, where 62% of the women interviewed said that if they lived nearer to their places of work, they would have better job opportunities. Many said they would work, which they don't, if they lived nearer the city, or if transport was cheaper and better. So, impact on men was less. So what has happened now is that these informal settlements, which were single-story and double-story and were near the city, are now becoming 5-story, 6-story, 10-story buildings. And Bombay, it has already happened. A lot of papers on Bombay, this has happened. And these are informal ownerships, because this is informal high-rise development. So they are becoming extremely overcrowded, and they suffer from all the negative aspects of overcrowding, which are very serious, and this overcrowding is increasing. Since the renters are increasing because of the rise of these multi-story buildings, before you had a house, you lived in it. Now you live in a building which your house has become 6 floors or 10 floors. The environment of the place has changed. It's not the same place. And people have come here whom you don't know. The street is no longer a public space. So these are the changes that are taking place. Meera Bapat, architect planner in Pune, she and I made some studies, she on Pune and me on Karachi. We went back to the settlements that we knew 30 years ago. And what did we find? We found that the settlements' infrastructure had improved. Their social indicators had improved, but they had become overcrowded, and the quality of life, in spite of the improvement in infrastructure and social indicators, had declined considerably. So, apart from that, a very important aspect was the vulnerability of the renters in these settlements, because the buildings are owned by muscle men, and the renter can be thrown out whenever they like, and the rent can be increased whenever they want. So this also has been documented in fairly great detail. Now, what has the government's response been? I won't go into the statistics of gap between in supply and demand, but what has the government's response been? After the 1990s, the government's response has been, go and access the market. That has been the response, both in India and in Pakistan, except for small projects that really don't make much of a difference. To access the market, the government has liberalized finance. But this has benefited the developers more than anyone else, because they can access finance for their clients. But if individually one wants to access a loan, the requirements are such that the poor cannot access it. You need a formal job, you need an asset that you can mortgage, etc. In addition to that, these additions to the loan capital can serve only 16% of the demand. So, to make affordable the product, the units are becoming smaller and smaller, both in the formal and in the informal sector. And they are becoming so small, 24 square meters, 30 square meters, that a family cannot live in them. Yet you have 10 to 15 people living in these homes. Now, I was in Delhi in 2007, and some of my friends said there's a lot of development, informal development taking place in Jamuna Park. So I decided to go there and take a look. My taxi driver was a Sardarji. I told him that Jamuna Park चलें. He said, "वहाँ क्या करेंगे आप?" मैं कहा मुझे plot खरीदना है. So he was very excited. He said he knew exactly the place where I could get a plot. And he asked me how big a plot. I said about 60 to 100 meters. He said, "आप उसमें कैसे रहेंगे?" मैं कहा नहीं मेरे ड्राइवर के लिए है. So he was very excited. He took me there. And so we went. It was all in Hindi, the big board, so I couldn't read it. I don't read the Devanagari script. But underneath it was written, property advisor. So we spoke to him. He showed me the map. He showed me which was the best plot. He told me I couldn't take any corner plots because they had already been given to those who had helped him in setting up this colony. Finally, we agreed on a price. And I said to him, "Is this sort of approved by the government, this scheme?" He said, "No, it's not approved by the government." I said, "Then why should I buy a plot there?" He said, "Ho jayega, approve ho jayega na." So I said, "I don't believe it. I'll construct a plot here. I have no proof of ownership." He said, "You have. I'm giving you the proof of ownership. I'm giving you a paper. This paper," he says, "is acceptable for all transactions, renting, building, etc." So I said to him, "But I don't believe this. This will cause me grave problems." He said, "Tusi kyun darte ho? Main hu na." Now, this is exactly how development takes place on the fringe of Karachi as well. No difference. And in the case of what I saw in 2007, it was a very huge development, enormous in size. Now you have all these informal systems of ownership, transfer, etc. They exist. They are not recognized. What do we do about them? How do we deal with them? I leave that as an open question. The second change that I would like to talk about is in the older settlements that were built between 1970 and 1980. They have changed. When I began working in these settlements, older people always used to come as the community leaders. And they used to talk in a flowery, they were illiterate. They used to talk in a flowery Urdu. They used to say Janab, Huzur, Sain, Niyazmand, Sharf Hasil Hua, etc., etc. Today, when you go there are young men who can read and write, and sometimes women, who call you uncle, and that too in English. Now, so these schools have changed, these settlements have changed. They are no longer purely working class settlements. Truckloads of women go to work into the factories every day, which they didn't before. There are beauty parlors, lots of them, marriage halls, community centers and schools that the people have set up themselves. Now these settlements their needs are less about water, electricity and sewage. Their needs are that their aspirations should be fulfilled, that they should be integrated into the middle class of the city. So they want more schools, they want vocational training, they want health, and they want culture. This is again something that they are fighting to get, but are not conscious that they are fighting specifically for this. The voting patterns of these old settlements have also changed. Whereas previously they voted for progressive parties who promised them regularization of their settlements, they now vote for the more conservative parties and increasingly have middle-class values. Unlike before, they are reluctant to join movements against evictions and/or reform. Their nature of relationship with officialdom has changed from protest to negotiation. They also constitute the largest group of voters in Karachi and are listened to. Meanwhile, shopkeepers, mandi operators, and transporters have become very powerful political agents. They have not yet exercised their power, but they are in a position to do so. And I don't think it would be too different in the rest of South Asia. Then you have new concepts that are floating around. Among the more radical planners and academics, the concept of new urbanism are being promoted, and future architects and planners are being trained in them. This has also been pushed by international financial institutions and Western academia, and they are telling us to have higher densities, mixed land uses, and quote-unquote inclusive cities. However, the three most dense cities in the world are situated in South Asia. Dhaka, with a density of 4,440 persons per hectare, Mumbai with 3,090, and Karachi with 2,800. These densities could not be achieved without the violation of existing density laws. For instance, Karachi's bylaws permit a maximum of 1,625 persons per hectare, and Mumbai's existing density could not have been achieved if its floor-to-area ratio of 1:1.33 would have been followed. The difference between the density and the actual density and rules and regulations is because low-income settlements have extremely high densities. In Karachi, they go up to 6,000 persons per hectare, similar to that of Dharavi, while elite settlements have densities of less than 200 persons per hectare. Also, housing units on 400 to 2,000 square meters of land in Karachi are only 2% of the housing stock, but they occupy 26% of the residential land of the city. Similar figures have been quoted for the other South Asian megacities. This form of development not only continues to take place, but has increased due to the changes in the urban development paradigm. But the question is it sustainable? Let me summarize. Megacities will have to find homes, transport, and social services for their new arrivals, who are not related to any formally structured group. They will have to cater to the needs and aspirations of the older informal settlements, which can only happen if they are protected from evictions and relocations and supported through laws, regulations, and procedures in developing the social and physical infrastructure that they are already trying to develop on their own. They will have to promote new societal values that are taking place. Societal values to accommodate the changes that are taking place. I will also briefly mention something else, which I had not planned to, but I think I should. This nature of social change in the older settlements. The most important group in a census is between 14 and 24 years of age, because it's the present and the future. In this age group, in 1981, 39% of women were married. Today, in this age group, less than 20% women are married. 17% men were married in 81, 8% men are married today. For the first time in the history of the city, we have an overwhelming majority of unmarried adolescents. And this is enough to change social structures and gender relations. And that is what has happened. And extended families, clans, settlements based on clan, they are rapidly becoming history. So this, also there are other factors. Court marriages, where a couple goes to a court to seek protection, because it's a self-willed marriage. In 1992, we had 12 to 15 applications per day for court marriages. In 2006, we had 250 plus applications for court marriages per day. And it has probably increased, but the time will come when it will decrease rapidly, when the concept of marrying of your own free will becomes acceptable in society. More than half the applications today come from the rural areas. So I think these are important changes that are taking place, which are going to affect, I feel, the future of these cities. Okay, I think I'm taking too long. Try and go faster. Now, one important thing is the changing nature of official planning. We inherited the welfare state model from our colonial masters. However, we were not able to implement it except on paper due to institutional and financial constraints and a lack of political will. This is what is normally said, but I don't think that is the only reason. The real reason was well-entrenched anti-poor social systems and land ownership patterns. I think this was one of the major reasons. This concept has been eclipsed by the neoliberalism of the 1990s and beyond, and has been promoted aggressively both by international institutions and their local partners. Collectively, these organizations and their local partners have promoted what has come to be known as the free market economy, which aims to remove subsidies on health, education, housing, increase taxation on utilities, sell government industrial and real estate assets to the national or international corporate sector, and remove restrictions on imports and exports. This has been done. I am not against all this, but there are other considerations. A whole new terminology and concepts have been developed to support this market economy. Concepts such as, it is not the business of the state to do business, cities are the engines of growth, direct foreign investment, and the concept of linking economic well-being with GDP growth alone have had a major impact on the national policies of South Asian countries, and especially on the megacities. A whole new world, a whole new thinking has become acceptable. Now, from what I read about India, that 500 special economic zones have been established, and corporate farming has been promoted. And according to some papers that I read, this between 2010 and 2015, it was estimated that 400 million people would be willingly or unwillingly be forced to move from rural to urban areas. I don't know how correct this is, but these are the figures you get in a number of papers. This is twice the population of the United States, France, and Germany put together. Now, all this has also affected agriculture. It is replacing food crops by cash crops, and in the process increasing the cost and shortage of food, and making the states vulnerable to corporate sector pressures and interests. I think this was nicely summed up by a farmer in Tharparkar, who said to me, "पहले हम जो बोते थे खाते थे, अब जो बोते हैं उसको बेचते हैं और खाना खरीदते हैं." I think this has happened, and it has affected a very large section of our population. The free market promoted political reforms and deregulations have also had a major impact on property markets and have reshaped the politics of land development. This has skewed, as a result, missed out on this. The free market promoted political reforms and deregulations have also had a major impact on property markets and have reshaped the politics of land development. Trading across borders in gold and contraband goods is no longer lucrative, As a result, the gangs and mafias involved in these underworld activities have become involved in the real estate business and linked up with their underworld partners. The narcotic trade today, it funds much of the real estate development, at least in my city. All this has introduced an element of violence and targeted killings and kidnappings of opponents, rivals, and social activists in the land and real estate sector. The state, in almost all cases, has responded to these market pressures and made land available for development through land use conversions, new development schemes, and the bulldozing of informal settlements. NGOs and CBOs who have challenged this process have faced two constraints apart from their own internal weaknesses and culture. One, an unsympathetic media, which reports stories but not the causes, which is, stories are there, the causes are not there. And the other is an absence of laws to prevent environmentally and socially inappropriate land conversions. Even where such laws do exist, rules, regulations, and procedures and institutions to manage them, to implement them, are often missing. As a result, courts deliver judgments that promote inequity, poverty, and social fragmentation. Media, of course, is more and more controlled by a few organizations and has a very big sort of viewership. 82% of Karachiites have access to TV, according to the census. Now, I'll pass over this because it will take too long and come to some other issues. What has been elaborated, what I have said before, has had a profound effect on the shape and politics of our cities. The shape that our cities are taking and the reasons behind them are the result of a powerful nexus of developers and investors, many of them of dubious origin. Otherwise, such large sums of money could not have been mobilized. Compromised government institutions and bureaucrats, and politicians seeking global capital for reshaping their cities in the image of the West, an image that is promoted implicitly and explicitly by the promoters of the market economy. To promote this paradigm, a new term and concept has been developed, and that is of the world-class city. Karachi, Mumbai, Delhi, all aspire to become world-class cities in their literature. Some wish to become like Shanghai, like Mumbai, others like Dubai, which is Karachi. Although the context of Shanghai or Dubai is very far removed from them. The world-class city concept has been defined beautifully and also sympathetically by Mahbubur Rahman in a brilliant paper. He's a Bangladeshi planner, and in other literature as well. According to the world-class city agenda, the city should have iconic architecture. It should be recognized with something like the highest building or highest fountain in the world. It should be branded for a particular cultural, industrial, or other produce or happening. It should be an international event city. It should have high-rise apartments as opposed to upgraded settlements and low-rise neighborhoods. It should cater to international tourism. It should have malls as opposed to traditional markets. This is how it has been described, and this is what a global city, a world-class city today is trying to achieve. For establishing this image, poverty is pushed out of the city to the periphery, and already poor, unfriendly bylaws are made even more unfriendly by permitting environmentally and socially unfriendly land use conversions and driving out industry and businesses from poor settlements. The three most important repercussions of this agenda are that global capital increasingly determines the physical and social form of the city, and in the process, projects have replaced planning. This is very important, that projects have replaced planning, And 3, land use is now determined on the basis of land value alone and not on the basis of social and environmental conditions. Land has unashamedly become a commodity, and so the poor cannot be adequately serviced. The city stands divided as never before. My city is now My city is now 4 cities. They speak different languages. They have different types of shopping centers. They even have different educational institutions. And they only meet at the beach or in some parks in the city center. Now, I would try and wind this up. High-rise buildings. We have conclusively showed that these settlements could be upgraded to 4 or 5 stories, practically showed it, with the help of the residents, and could be regularized. So we do not feel the need for pulling these settlements down and replanning them, as the state insists on doing. As far as events are concerned, from what we gather, about 500,000 persons were evicted from Delhi for the preparation of the 2010 Asian Olympics alone. Relocation, numerous studies show how poor people become after relocation. There are numerous studies. Loss of social capital, lot of loss of physical capital, and relocations are 30 to 20 kilometers, sometimes much more than that, from where they work. Children's education is the most serious disruption that is caused. One of the projects that we opposed, which was partially successful, 2,800 students could not take their metric and pre-metric exams because of the bulldozing that took place. So the world-class city image is all about gentrification, and it has no place in it for informal businesses and hawkers except as organized tourist attractions. The link of these hawkers and businesses with low-income people for whom they make life affordable and with commuters is not recognized, and as such, large-scale evictions of formal businesses and hawkers have taken place without any compensation in all the megacities of Asia. Calcutta perhaps was the worst example. This has impoverished millions of families. Then the free market economy has led to a considerable liquidity in banks and leasing companies. This has been utilized for providing loans for the purchase of cars. Karachi registered in 2006-07 606 cars per day. When I was in Delhi in 2007, I was told the cars being registered here were 1,250 cars per day. In Bangkok was even more, 1,750 cars per day. Now, this is a nexus between the automobile industry, the banking sector, and the oil sector. And we learned this when we discovered that $1.6 billion worth of loans had been given by the Karachi banks for the purchase and leasing of cars. And we went to the Prime Minister and said, can't we use this for some other purposes? And he was excited. And so we had a meeting with 18 bank heads who said no, automobile was the thing they would invest in because the loans were short, they knew the clients, they were sure of returns. Housing was not something they would invest in. And one of them told me when we were leaving, he said, Arif, you must realize that the automobile industry and the banking industry and the banking sector are one and the same thing. They are not two different things. So these are the new realities with which we have had to deal. Now, there are many other factors also that I'll just touch upon. because I had wanted to read this out, but it will take too long. Transport. We can have all the mass transit systems. We have big plans for Karachi. But when we study them, we see that the transportation for people living on the fringe and in these large informal settlements will not improve. The transport that we will be providing them will be far too expensive, unless a very major subsidy is attached to it. And it is expensive because we are building on a process of build, operate, and transfer, which is also a free market economy concept. Whereas if we just let the Pakistan Railways manage it, the cost would be considerably less. So that is one aspect I wanted to touch upon. We have in Karachi about 80,000 autos, and we have an additional 60,000 what we call kinchis. These are 6-seater rickshaws, actually, motorcycle rickshaws. The Karachiites love them. They find them cheaper. Women find them safer. And the government wishes to ban them. And it did ban them. But they are still there because the High Court of Sindh decided that they were essential for the people. Now the problem is, what do we do with them? There's so much antagonism against them. And the police, even though they have the right now to function, does everything possible to limit their movement. Then the other manner in which this issue is being tackled, the transport issue, is by motorbikes. In 2004, we had 400,000 motorbikes. Today, we have 1.7 million motorbikes. And all surveys show, we had surveys done at bus stops, everybody wants motorbikes. And if we reduce the price to 20,000 rupees instead of 32,000 rupees, I don't think we'll need a mass transit system or any expansion of a mass transit system. Now the question is, do we promote these forms of movement, forms of transport? It's a serious discussion which we have been trying to indulge in. So should they be promoted? Now, I don't know of any city, any of these cities, that has really produced an alternative vision for the city. There's been a lot of writing on what should be, should not be, but a vision that is acceptable has not been acceptable or seriously pursued has not been presented. When the Karachi Special Development Plan was being made, I was a member of one of the committees, and we said, let's not have this vision, world-class city. Let us have a vision, a pedestrian and commuter-friendly city. It would change everything. The whole manner of planning would change if that vision was kept there. But one of the members of the Asian Development Bank, who was the party, said, with this vision, nobody would invest any money in the city. So that was out. The other serious thing is projects replacing planning. Karachi, for the foreseeable future, will only have projects. There's going to be no serious planning. The planning will be overtaken by the projects. Accepting this, I tried to promote some principles on the basis of which projects could be judged and or modified. These principles are: 1, projects should not damage the ecology of the region in which the city is located. 2, projects should, as a priority, seek to serve the interests of the majority who live in our cities, who are the lower middle class and the working class. 3, projects should decide land use on the basis of social and environmental considerations and not on the basis of land value alone. And 4, projects should protect the tangible and intangible cultural heritage of the communities that live in them. In my opinion, this would produce much better projects and pro-people projects. But again, at the same meeting, the same gentleman responded, with your 4 points, there would be no projects. So that's another issue, I think, which needs to be taken into consideration. However, to finish, the question is whether the megalomania and opportunism of politicians and planners will accept a new and more humane paradigm that curtails their profits and decommoditizes land. I think this is a very fundamental issue. I do not think that they will, unless they are pressurized by the city-wide networks, armed with alternative research and an alternative vision. In this, I think professional education can play a very important role. Right now, professional education is increasingly becoming pro-neoliberal, in the bad sense of the word. I have often thought that it might help if graduating architects, planners, and engineers could take an oath similar to those of doctors. If they did not follow the terms of the oath, their names would be removed from the list of practicing professionals. In 1983, after evaluating an important urban renewal project which created poverty and environmental degradation, in a writing I made a pledge. I'll just quote from that. I wrote, I will not do projects that will irreparably damage the ecology and environment of the area in which they are located. I will not do projects that increase poverty, dislocate people, and destroy the tangible and intangible cultural heritage of communities that live in the city. I will not do projects that destroy multi-class space and violate building bylaws and zoning regulations, and I will always object to insensitive projects that do all this, provided I can offer viable alternatives. Well, I've tried to keep my promise, except that I have violated building rules and regulations, but they were bad ones. and they were bad ones. But I have put this before the architectural community again and again. Why don't we have such an oath? And one of the architects gave an answer. He said to me, Arif bhai, hum to bazaar mein baithe hain. And this is a reality which also has to be taken into consideration when discussing a new paradigm. Thank you so much.
So, for those of you who will remain behind, we'll take a few questions, quick comments, some questions from Arif Saab. He mentioned Parveen Rahman. May I, with your permission, I would like to pay tribute to the memory of Parveen Rahman. Arif Saab mentioned targeted killings as one of the fallouts of the kinds of cities we are forming. Parveen Rahman, student and then a colleague of Arif, was killed on the streets of Karachi in the line of duty of trying to forward this vision, a people-friendly, humane vision of the city. So I think if there's one thing we can do right now is to indeed pay tribute to her memory, which is still fresh.